In the last lesson, we learned how to begin creating a database access layer, basically by adding a bunch of functions. So we created the beginnings of it. It's certainly, there could be way more, but we went ahead and created a connect method, or a connect function, and a get function. Okay, so that works, but as we learned, it's really not convenient. We have this select, we're hard coding all of this information in. When we're calling bind result, we're hard coding that in, never hard code. Otherwise, you can't use it again. So what we're going to build now is a MySQL class that's 10 times more flexible. So let's take a look at this. If I go to the top, it's going to be a little daunting, to be honest. We come down, you can see it's way more, about 200 lines of code, lots of scary stuff like call user function array, lots of scary methods, build, query. But don't worry, it's all the same thing. It's just much more flexible, and this allows us to not use specifics. So you can see with function, we had a connect function, but instead when we moved that to a class, we placed that information within our constructor method. That way when you create a new instance of the class, we go ahead and connect to the database. Doesn't that make sense? Next, we have a query method. This is a simple method where the user can pass in a SQL query. We do just a little bit of cleaning up and then we prepare it and execute. Notice here, dynamic bind results, we're calling a method. So whenever you have clumps of code that you repeat multiple times throughout your functions, always abstract that away to its own method. That way you don't have to keep writing the same code, especially if you have to make a change, you would then have to make changes in 5 different places. In this case, we can simply abstract that away to its own function. All right, let's go back. Beyond that, we have more helper methods. We have a get method, which is pretty much the same as a select star, where you can pass in the name of the table and the number of rows to retrieve. We have an update method, a delete method, a where method, and then a few more that we'll discuss as we learn. But just know it's all doing the same stuff as our functions file. It's just doing way more, and it's far more flexible. So let's say you found this database class and you want to utilize it. Okay, let's do that first before we learn how to create it from scratch. Don't worry if this is confusing. I'm going to go through every single line with you. All right, index.php, I've included it. Now, we know we called the class MySQL so let's create a new instance of that. db equals a new instance of the MySQL database class. And if we take a look at our constructor function, these are the parameters that we'll need to pass: the host, a username, a password, and db. As I'm on my localhost, this is easy, very little security. It's called localhost. My username is root for MySQL. The password is root as well. And the name of the database we are working with is called db. All right. So now, if we run this, we're not going to get anything, and that means we did successfully connect, because if we didn't, it would die. All right. So now let's go ahead and use the most generic method we have available, is query. And we can see here, I've added some doc blocks, so let's go try that out. Let's see, what methods are available to us? Okay, we have delete, get. We have 2 versions of get, one where we pass in 1 and the other where we pass in a num rows as well. Okay, so let's do this one by default, and it wants to know, we want to use the query method, don't we? db query, there we go, and it just accepts this one. And let's pass in select star from, and we do need a table name. The table name is called posts, so we're just going to get everything from there. Okay. But if we go back to it and we check over it again, you can see at the bottom, let's go to the bottom, it does return an array containing the information that was retrieved. So let's make sure we trap that, rows. All right, and why don't we go ahead and check this out. So pre-tag, and we'll print our rows. Let's see what that returns. Save that and clean this up just a bit. Run the file, and we get an array containing all of the information. Look how convenient that was. We had 3 lines of code. It was a black box. This MySQL black box, we plugged into it, we passed some information, and it was returned to us, and we didn't have to write any of this. That's the reason for classes, to abstract away code. Okay, so if we wanted to echo this out, you should know how to do this by now, but just to make sure that we're all on board, we'll say PHP, and if you already know this, feel free to skip ahead one moment. So we'll say for each rows as row, we'll echo out maybe a heading 2 tag, and we'll do row, and we'll get the title. And the title, just to make sure we're all on board, title is the name of the column, and we'll also get the body. And we'll echo with just some p tags for now. row, body. Okay, that should do it. So come back to Chrome, refresh the page, and we get our information. That's fantastic. All right, so let's take a look at maybe one or two more. Let's take a look at utilizing this cool where statement. So we can call a where method. We pass in a value or a property and a value, and then this sets a global where, which is an array. All right, let's try that out. So I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to say, we'll say where. This method allows you to specify a where statement for SQL queries. Okay, so let's figure out what we're going to set up. Where, just for the demo, let's grab the one where the ID is equal to 7. All right, so where ID equals 7. So that's not going to do anything just yet. We've just declared our where method. So we called that. Let's see if we can find it. There we go, where. So this goes and sets this property right here with an array, and that array will simply contain the property name and the value. All right, so now let's call db get, and we're going to get posts. So if I did that too quickly, get accepts either one or two parameters. The first one needs to be the name of the table to retrieve from, and the second one is going to be the number of rows, if any, to return. And by default, that's null because it's not required. All right, so we're going to get from post where the ID equals 7. Let's go back to Chrome, refresh. Whoops. Of course, we need to assign that because it does return. And we get a single one. Let's double check that. 7. The ID is another title, body is another body section. And there we go. So if we want to change that to 6, there we go. We can do even more. We can specify any kind of where statement. So if we want to say where the body is equal to that, let's try that out. Where, and this could return multiple. Let's try that one out. And now we get this same one because it's new body. Okay, we can do a lot of things. We can update, we can delete, and it's all the same method. So if we were to get rid of where and we just called get, that would simply perform a select all statement. There you go. If we want to pass in the second parameter, let's only return 2. Okay, that way only 2 are returned. Isn't this extremely flexible where you don't have to write this code yourself? It's all abstracted away to its own class. So that's the introduction of the final product of what we're going to build. Take some time, watch this again if you need to, soak it all in, because in the next lesson, we're going to start building this thing.